Hi everybody, John Meadows here, and a great question I wanted to talk about today is how do you tell the difference whether you're overtrained or whether you're maybe just being lazy? Kind of what's the difference? Because how you answer that is going to determine, whether you train hard or not. Overtraining itself is something that's not crystal clear. And it doesn't happen quickly. I see people sometimes do a workout or I hear people sometimes say, well, that workout, he overtrained that workout. Well, there's no workout that you just overtrained. Overtraining is kind of an accumulation of events that occur. And in my opinion, you're training muscles before they can recover too frequently. And that could be one issue. Or outside your muscles, it could actually be your central nervous system. So your central nervous system isn't getting a break. And it's very important when it comes to producing force and things of that nature. So again, overtraining is not something that happens overnight. It's something that kind of builds up and builds up and builds up. But what's going to happen along the way is your body's going to talk to you. It's going to give you some communication, and it's going to let you know that you're headed into overtraining. And I think the important thing to understand is to kind of evaluate when those things happen. One of us just be aware, just be cognizant that those things are happening so you can really pay attention and then adjust if you need to adjust. So there's really four things that kind of jump out at me when I think about overtraining. And the first one is it's a lack of performance. So you're in a gym, and have you ever trained and you're using a weight, let's say you're doing a bench press and it feels real explosive and it feels real good. And then the next week, maybe it feels kind of slow. All of a sudden, the effort that it takes for you to push that bar seems to be much greater. And then the week after, it might seem even heavier. And then it might seem even heavier. You see the pattern I'm going here? So your performance, and a lot of times it's not just the maximum amount of strength you can lift, it's how you lift it. So does the bar feel heavier? Has the bar speed slowed down with the same weight? That's a key component that I look at. And also when you look at athletes, let's say they're training a vertical leap, they can't necessarily produce as much force. You'll notice their leaps aren't as high. If you're doing some explosive training with them, that maybe coming out of the blocks, they just don't seem as explosive. They're not really flying out, but you'll notice actual performance decrements. And these, again, it's not one workout. You'll see it week after week after week. And that tells you right there, something needs to be adjusted. Now, the second half of that is often there's issues with sleep. Now, this one's interesting because you can have people who all of a sudden are super tired and they want to sleep a lot. Or the sleep problem is the opposite. They can't sleep. They'll go to bed, they'll lay there at night, and they'll just sit there. They're tired, but they can't fall asleep, and they get insomnia. And I've seen both cases of that. And, you really got to kind of look at, take a closer look at someone's kind of life, what's going on in their life, what time they're getting to bed. Are they staying up on their computer all night and working? Is that what's keeping them awake? Things like that. So that's not by itself, it's not a cut and dry answer. And then I'll throw another thing out. So the weather just got really cold here, really cold. And when it gets cold and it's winter, I always find myself more sleepy, more tired. So this morning I woke up probably a half hour later than usual. I felt tired and I went to the gym. I was training my back and I was doing some cable rows. And I did a couple sets. Again, just feeling kind of sleepy. The weight felt pretty light. I kept going up and kept going up. And the next thing I know, I was doing the whole stack. And I don't normally do that. The tiredness that I had today was probably more of a circadian rhythm thing. It had nothing to do with being overtrained. I thought that was real interesting today. And it almost, this conversation that we're having right now, it almost went through my head today. I was sitting there training and I was like, well, I'm not overtrained because I was super strong and everything felt really good. So, but sleep issues are another thing you really have to look at carefully. And that can actually lead into the third one, which is recovery issues. Maybe you haven't changed your diet, maybe you haven't changed your training program, but now all of a sudden you're getting more sore. your recovery just dips off. And that's also something very, very common I see with people. You know, they'll send me a message and say, hey man, I just did the same leg workout and I just can't recover from my workouts now, really sore. That happens too. And that can be a number of things too. But I always think that recovery problem is a key indicator. And you might not be overtrained at that point, but when you can't recover, if you don't adjust your training program, you will get overtrained. That recovery thing, so you can kind of see all this stuff is linked together. So the recovery, if you have issues there, then so we'll go backwards. Sleep. Maybe you're not sleeping enough, so maybe it's hurting your recovery. You're not recovering, so maybe you're having performance decrements because you're not, so those things are all this stuff is all tied in together. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. The last one is chronic injuries. And it can be, typically it's like tendonitis. But you'll notice, where I notice it, for example, is in my forearms. Specifically on the lateral side. I get this lateral epicondylitis. It feels almost like the tendons are kind of frayed. It feels like they're kind of like guitar strings are getting ready to pop. And that's not so much a nervous system one, that's just kind of your body's breaking down. And then sometimes I might feel my lower back getting inflamed, but sometimes it might be my hips. Sometimes I'm having problems there, but you'll notice that all these little injuries start to compound each other and people try to work through them and they get worse. And then there's some compensation for one injury. I had an injury with my back a while back. I think it was one of my teres muscles, and I think it had an impact on my front delt. And then my problem with my front delt, I think, resulted in a pec strain I had a while back. If you remember when I had that pec strain, I think that was all related. So you can kind of have this snowball effect where one injury leads to the second injury, leads to a third injury, but your body starts to physically break down. You're not recovering, so your performance goes down, and you start getting hurt. These things, again, they all tie together. But as you're evaluating whether you need a break or not, those are the 4 key things I want you to think about. And if it's just one thing, maybe you just need to plan around it and figure out a way to adjust. Like if it's sleep, for example, if that's a problem, you can't sleep, maybe you got to look at your sleeping patterns and so forth. If it's your recovery, maybe you want to look at your nutrition. Maybe you're under eating your calories. Maybe your caloric need has went up, something like that. But my point is try to adjust for those things. But if you're experiencing all 4 of these things, you probably need to back off. You're not lazy. You need to back off. It's okay to back off sometimes. Now, the way I back off, it depends now on that level you're at. Are you really overtrained, or are you just kind of getting overtrained? And I don't really have a good answer on telling you the difference between the two. But if you feel like you're starting to get overtrained, then just back off your intensity, increase your calories, get a little bit more rest. Just do that for 2 or 3 weeks. Let your body kind of catch up. Don't take any sets to failure. Cut down your volume a little bit. It's kind of like an active recovery, really. Now, if your body's banged up, it's injured, you're not sleeping, you feel terrible, man, get out of the gym. Enjoy yourself. There's nothing wrong with getting out of the gym for a week or 2. Any muscle that you lose, you're going to gain right back, plus your body's going to feel better. And, and the most important thing may not even be the physical aspect. Mentally, you might be better. So mentally, you can come back strong. And so anyways, there's just a quick video today on overtraining and deciding whether you're lazy or not, or whether you actually do need a break. So hopefully this helps. If any of this wasn't clear, just comment below, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I appreciate your support. Thanks, and we'll see you next video. Also, stay tuned. I'm going to talk a little bit in more detail about how to actually fix being overtrained. So check out that video as well later.